The most important part to any zoo is the animals in the enclosures they call home. Throughout the series, I'll be designing different enclosures for an array of animals, whilst also keeping guest interaction at the forefront of every build. Join me each week as I tackle a new enclosure and idea and try and bring it to life within Planet Zoo. Today I'm building a sea lion enclosure. This enclosure will take up this large space here between the capybaras and brown bears. Here are the statistics, and obviously these are Californian sea lions, so they will be found in California along the coast here. And as you can see, the water requirement is a big thing here, and land isn't so much of an issue. In terms of the group sizes, I do have 4 females and 1 male in this group, but obviously you can see the group sizes you can have there on screen now. So with this build, I knew I wanted to include a show element to it, so seating was put in to the left of this footpath here. This was something I've wanted to do for a while, and obviously it really spices up the enclosures I have within the zoo. With this enclosure, I wanted to focus on the outside first before worrying about getting the animals in. So you'll see a lot of detail and the sort of outline of the enclosure that I wanted to build. I use painted walls again, a very similar style to the flamingo enclosure with the blue, just to add that pop of colour to this side of the zoo. One thing I've noticed with my enclosures, they're very square. So I knew with this enclosure I wanted to add loads of curves, especially with it being very sea based. I knew I wanted the sort of paths to mimic waves. And as you can see, I did toy with different ideas in terms of extending the area. But I sort of looked at this overall and I was happy with the build. So with that blue wall that I just built, I do continue that around the whole enclosure to really box it in, using very similar designs to other zoos in the UK that do have sea lion shows and kind of box in this area. And even in some zoos, they aren't even open all the time. It's only when a show is on. But I wanted to make sure this was accessible 24/7, as the talks would only happen once a day. As you can see there, I've made a very deep pit. I wanted to try this. I wanted different depths to it, just to really add that depth for the sea lions to dig down. You will notice with this enclosure, there is no underwater viewing area. I felt that was too similar to the king penguin enclosure, which is kind of just off to the left of the screen there, which you can see now. And here I am toying with a different way of building the walls. This isn't usually how I build, but I wanted to give this a go. Because I thought it would add those nice little curves. Now they weren't as curvy as I'd hoped, they were more diagonal walls, but it did make the enclosure a very unique shape once it was finished. A very long time was spent on getting this shape of the enclosure, which you can see an overview here now. I've used different panels. Obviously we've got the bigger bay windows to the right there and those smaller ones in the back corner there. So I knew I wanted to include as much glass as possible so you could see as much of this enclosure from every angle. Here I am just adding some more glass, raising that wall. So one thing I really wanted to do here was make it look like California. So I included the sand and really wanted to theme the outside of this enclosure because it's what people would see first. And these blue walls are quite overpowering. So I did want to take away from that. And this is why I'm adding these trees and loads of theming elements, which you'll see come along shortly. I do feel like this is the first time in a long time that I have themed the outside of an enclosure. I have focused quite heavily on the inside, and obviously this, I just wanted to make it feel very vibrant and unique. And there were some lovely theming pieces in the Oceanic pack, which isn't quite what the theme I was going for, but there was lots of sort of beachy seaside feels to it. And as you can see, I've placed a few things around that enclosure. One thing I do love is these pre-built elements, and these archways were fantastic just to add that big grand entrance into this enclosure. So I added them all the way around and really tried to focus on theming the outside, which I feel like this is the first time I've done this since more of the African enclosures. And really divided up my time as best as possible, because as you can see, the sea lions aren't even in there yet, and I've not even touched the inside of that enclosure. I wanted to focus on the outside and then move in. With the outside looking heavily themed, it was time to get in that knoll barrier. My favourite barrier of all. I do like using this because obviously it means I can use my own designs for the fencing, which I have used again here. And I'm just going around the enclosure. And the last thing to do is add the water. With the outside of the enclosure done, it was time to get the sea line in. And here they are coming in now, and I'm just getting that texture right, like always, making sure the ground levels are perfect for the animal. Now, with the outside being heavily themed, I knew I wanted the inside to be heavily themed, and I knew I really wanted to have like a jetty area coming out. So you will see that whilst I'm talking. Here, I'm trying not to add too much height to the build. And I didn't want to add too much foliage as well, especially like big, large pieces, because I didn't want it to take away from the enclosure itself. So I've tried to keep it very minimalistic. As you can see, the right hand side of this enclosure I have left bare. This is because I want to put in the bedding and the feeding area and just sort of separate it using that same style of fencing that I used around the outside of the enclosure. Here I'm adding enrichment and putting in my own jetty at the moment, but I do later change this for a pre-built one because it just looks so much better than the one I had built, and it really filled in that space. And also it's a good use of space for enrichment items. Here is the waterfall piece going in again. I last used this on the flamingo enclosure, and I wanted to find a nice spot for it to go just to block off where their house would be, because sea lions don't really need a shelter. They just need a place to sleep, and that's what I provide in this back corner here. One of the last things I wanted to add to this build was the presentation point so that the sea lion show could go ahead, and I went about setting this all up. Overall, I'm really happy with this build, and I love the outcome of it, and I love the colours, and I'm really glad to have a show in my zoo now and finally have an area where guests can commune and watch something and learn something as well.